G'day, everybody. How's it going out there? Well, it's time to talk, comrade, about how you, the worker, are overexploited by late capitalism. Yes, today we're going to talk about organization and unions. That doesn't really have much to do with furry, I guess, but it does now, apparently. So today we're going to talk about a interesting thing that had happened. There was an art piece that was done by somebody who goes by their pseudonym of Jay that caught some eye of non-furry press. A Daily Dot article, who will have a link in the description below, discussed this particular cartoon. And while inflationary cartoons such as this aren't too uncommon in the furry fandom, certainly not newsworthy, right? I mean, there's new inflation stuff all the time on FA, right? But the reason that this one made news is because of the response of the organization which was being represented by that little emblem on the skunk's tummy there, the Industrial Workers of the World Union. The screenshot here on the right side shows that the the Chicago branch of this particular union actually took this piece of fan art from Jay and placed it on their Facebook page. And of course, a lot of people reacted to it. Funnily enough, it was from Chicago. I guess now unions are a big Chicago thing. Midwest Fur Fest is a big Chicago thing. I guess now it's like they just come together into this one strange and unusual circumstance. So it's definitely inspired by certain political cartoons. And it's always interesting to see political cartoons take shape in the fandom. Political cartoons have not, they're not very common in the fandom, but they have existed. Like the boomers, the boomer millennial furs, like with the full suits versus the 2019 furs are all cool and hip with the poodling thing, right? That sort of like there was one example. But interestingly enough, when you're taking the idea of this particular fan thing, um, I would critique it in one way, and that is, um, I love. I'll say the positive first. I love the phrase "squash the boss." That's actually a pretty cool. I like the slogan. It's cool. It's a catchy slogan, and aesthetically, it looks pretty cool. Um, but it I have one big caveat, and this is important when you're making propaganda or political cartoons, is the idea of the aggressor versus the aggressee. When you're making propaganda cartoons, and to be fair, I've looked at the Industrial Workers of the World's political cartoons, and they don't seem to shy away from being seen as the aggressor towards like bosses and things like that. So I mean, I guess it's just kind of par for the course. But a lot of the times when you're talking about aggressor versus aggressee, um, cartoons that would show the boss or show a boss and a worker figure usually are inverted from what you see here. Usually, it's the boss that's like this big, overbloated person in a top hat who is just engorged with their greed, and they're usually like their engorged inflatedness is usually pressing down upon the workers who are trying to sustain that level of living by the upper management, by the boss, by the person in the top hat. So basically, usually these kind of things would be inverted, right? And so that is a big thing. And usually, like you would have like the boss guy, and like I could picture like the workers trying to keep it afloat. But then the union, the IWW steps in. They have like this big pin with like the pinhead having like the IWW logo on it, and like they're gonna shove that pin, and they're shoving that pin into the overbloated boss to sort of burst that overinflatedness and to give the workers space. That sort of concept and idea about aggressor versus aggressee and using the idea of defensive action versus offensive action is very important in political cartoons. Um, Usually, the overinflated kaiju monster is typically seen as the negative aspect rather than the positive one, such as like old cartoons, such as the big kaiju squid of Big Oil with its tentacles wrapped around like these oil refinery rigs and just having its tentacles all over everything. Usually, that is classical sort of style of political cartoons in which they would do that. Now, interestingly enough, so I guess the question now comes to, and this is sort of the second part of this idea, is should furries unionize? The funny thing is that the industrial workers of the world sort of embraced this cartoon, but then they sort of backed off. Um, when I'm reading the Daily Dot article and things like that, it looks like the original tweets and the tweets that were being referenced kind of got deleted. And interestingly, though, the words on the tweet are still embedded in the news article, which apparently is a feature about Twitter that I didn't know. So if you don't know it, uh, just be aware that if you tweet something and somebody embeds your tweet into into an article or something like that, that tweet will actually be retained. The text of the tweet will be retained. Interestingly enough, the article was had a tweet which had the subtweet from the IWW, and even that subtweet got deleted, which is probably why that tweet got deleted, is because like the whole thing that they quote tweeted got deleted. So it kind of like snowballed and things like that. So really, the IWW was like, "Oh man, yeah, we're gonna embrace this furry thing. We want to get furry members of our union," and then they kind of backed off. Uh, Probably because it's like people were like, "Oh man," like probably it probably didn't fit too well with the reputation that they were trying to maintain with their workers and things like that. Industrial is very much a blue collar style of thing, and some blue collar guys are like, "Meh, really, you're gonna cater to the furry people? Are you serious, man? Come on." Come on, I don't want to deal with that. I just want to go to work and work my blue collar job. I don't know. But it's interesting that they kind of like they did keep one retweet where they retweeted a furry going, "Yeah, I want someone to represent me, and I'll pay you union dues." Um, that's it's always interesting, and I'll link that one in the description below too. That the one that they retained like that. To furries, I'm going to write an article about this particular situation, which will be in the link in the description below. Um, and one of the big takeaways on this is that if you are going to join a union, make sure that you read up about the union, what services they provide, and if that union is right for you. A lot of unions will gladly take your money, right? Any organization will gladly take your money. If you want to give money to someone, hey, you want to give money to me? No, I'm just kidding. I don't want. But most organizations will gladly take your money, and they don't care whether they're providing you a benefit or not. If you're going to throw money at them, they'll gladly. Um, but you should be aware that when you are, going into a union, that you are benefiting in some way from it. It shouldn't just be a one-sided relationship, or somebody should be benefiting. It doesn't necessarily have to be you all the time. It can be others, right? And that's sort of a thing that people weigh in, because a union at their best can represent the workers against organizations that can sometimes be over exploitative of workers, and collective bargaining can be a big thing. But at the worst, a union can be basically just about as exploitative as your employer. Here is a screenshot of one particular union called the UFCW, and this is one I have experience with, because when I was in the first place that I worked as as a kid, when I was a young teenager, they were a union. I worked I worked as a cashier in a shop that was unionized with the UFCW here. And unfortunately, it's sort of I sort of put the blame a sort of bit on myself, but I also sort of blame the organization too, looking back upon it, because I would get paid. Um, Back then, $8 an hour was minimum wage, or even less than that. Like when I first started working, like it was like $6, right? That was minimum wage. Um, it's gone up to like 10 or so cents, but back then that's how much minimum wage was, and the union dues were $7 a week. So literally 1 hour of my time was being taken by the union. Now, to be fair, the union provides services for individuals and such like that. But I feel like it was obviously that most of the benefits were going towards the older individuals. And I didn't feel like, and for one, I didn't take that much advantage of it, right, when I'm young, because I'm not like, I don't, when you're young, you're stupid and you don't like read into all that material. But you look back on it and you think, well, someone should be explaining this stuff to you, right? Someone should, like, even if you're young and are a part-time worker, if you're part of a union, someone in the union should be explaining your benefits to you. Like at least once, a union representative should be stopping by your store at least once a year and making sure that they talk to the employees on hand and saying, or setting up a meeting of some sort, and setting up times for meetings, so that people can discuss the benefits of union membership and things like that. The employee shouldn't have to go out of their way. They're paying for a service, in my opinion. And if the union needs to abide by that service, if and especially if the employer agrees, right, with the whole thing, they should be, there should be that sort of cooperation in that sense. I don't feel like that happened. I feel like basically with my time with the UCFW, that I was basically having just a part of my pay go to some organization that I didn't know much about. And I sort of looked back. When I was doing research for this thing, I kind of went back and I wanted to say, how does their website make me feel? How do I feel when I read their website? And their two top articles here sort of highlight my issue with unions at their worst. And this is like literally the one on this one article here talks about how union members make footballs for the Super Bowl. And first off, I'm like, first off, how can you say the Superb Owl, right? From my understanding, no one's allowed to say or do, without licensing the NFL, like you're not allowed to say the big game like that, right? You're not allowed to say Superb Owl, right? Like right out loud like that without licensing. So even if your union members are making those footballs, and by the way, this guy who's making the football here, he's probably got a name. It may be Raj or Leopold or something. I don't know. George. I don't know. He's probably got a wife and kids. He has an identity. He's not union member number 5967 making footballs for us, right? Like, and that's sort of like one of my pet peeves is like the whole idea of a unionization is to feel like you're part of a group, that you feel like you're human, right? The idea and the concept is that you're feeling dehumanized by your employer because you're just an employee to them and you're exploited and they don't care if you're sick or whatever. They want you to come in and work for them and do the job that they want you to do and just throw money at you and go, here, your time's not worth all that much, right? You feel exploited. And that's the whole reason you have a union in the first place. And then the union comes in and goes, well, hello, union member. You have your dues? I have a name. Thank you. It's George. I make footballs, okay? I make footballs, George. And then like the second one right here, this, oh well, there's a union, there's a pro union shop that sells vitamins, and we're going to give you 20% off of the vitamins. It's like, that's what my union dues are going towards. If I wanted to do that, I'd get a Groupon subscription, right? It's like if I wanted to buy things that it's like if I wanted to feel like I wanted to buy things that I'm being pushed into buying things with a percentage off, then I would like become a Groupon Select member or something, right? Like, honestly, like I could give a rat's arse about some vitamins. To be fair, if you go to their website, there's like scholarships and things like that. And some of the, yes, as I said, benefits are not always supposed to benefit you. But, you know, I obviously had a bad experience with a union, right? People have bad experiences with things. And that doesn't necessarily mean that all unions are exploitative or anything like that. You really have to do your research. You know, don't pay attention to propaganda cartoons and what they say and the speech and what they say. Pay attention to the actions that they do, right? See if they actually help the worker. See if they actually provide services that the employer was never going to provide them, or actually pushing the employer to provide better wages or better circumstances. You know, are they there? Are they pushing for the changes that need to be made, or are they sitting back on their laurels and taking a union? You need to be careful about those kind of things, because otherwise, that the organization and the union that you thought was going to be helping you, um, you know, live freer and and live a less oppressed life, and easing your being your feelings of being exploited by your employer. And basically they could take that and make it so that both your employer and them as the union are exploiting you from both ends, you know. And you don't want that. No one wants to get split roast by their freaking employer and their union at the same time, because you know furries would make art about that, right? I mean, we made this. I mean, that's not a suggestion or anything, but you just got to be careful about organizations like that, because they can and will take advantage. Because basically, I mean, if you think about it like this, it's like you know, unions are supposed to be anti-capitalistic, but yet here we have like they're trying to sell you a product, right? They're trying to sell you vitamins. They're trying to entice you to buy vitamins with their union website, right? It's like, how capitalistic is that, right? It's not. If the essence of a union is to be anti-capitalistic and anti-exploitative, making a sales pitch about a product on their website, other than scholarships and improvement of the self, right, is against the kind of concepts that a lot of people on the left would see as being what a union is supposed to stand for. And so that's the thing I would warn you about if you wanted to go for unions. But I guess I had a rant about that. But like, as far as like, and I know that a lot of the IWW is trying to entice furries, like, yeah, you could become members. But the thing is, like, I don't think that IWW, the Industrial Workers of the World Union, um, is quite a right fit for furries. Now, if you're a furry who works in an industrial job, then that might be fine, right? Then that they might be a good union for you. But the problem is that when it comes to the furry fandom itself, are furries industrial workers? No, we're more freelancers, right? Most of us are freelancers, and there is a freelance union style thing, the freelancers union, right? There's different unions that provide different services for different people for different needs, and it's important that you do your research on them before committing to anything, especially if you're going to be paying union dues. I think as far as like organization within furry fandom, I don't think the furry fandom could quite do with, you know, create a labor union, because, you know, furry fandom is spread out throughout the world. And there's different labor laws in different places, and it would be very cumbersome to create a labor union. Not saying it's impossible, but at this point, I think it would be more in furry's best interest to not focus on creating labor unions or anything like that, but more on guilds, more on like, because we have different people with different talents and work on different things. We have podcasters, YouTubers, artists, writers, performers, musicians. We have all these different groups. Um, DJs and AV people. We have different people who have different skills, and they use those different skills in different ways. And I think that the best ways for furries to organize and to correlate and to congregate is not through labor unions, but through instead guilds. A good example of that would be the Furry Writers Guild, which is a useful tool for authors to like know where to publish their books, to get advice about editing and things like that. There's a link in the description below for that particular organization. And but not only for the people who create, I think that creating guilds and communities based upon people who consume those kind of content, right? People who like to go to clubs, right? Clubbing furries who like to go to the DJ events and like to consume the atmosphere of those particular dances and things like that. Furries who like to read. They might not necessarily write, but they would like to read. Furries who consume art and are very much into the visual arts. Furries who love experiencing different podcasts and different things, getting those guys together and getting communities, furry gamers, right? And not just furry gamers, but furry gamers focusing on furry games, right? Focusing on anthropomorphism in video games, right? Groups like that, groups that you can have those kind of things and host those kind of situations, I think will help the community a whole lot more, especially when the community and the content is growing at such a rate where it's hard to keep track of all these things every year, and not everyone can experience everything. Um, Having people who can recommend good pieces of literature or games that people might have gone under the radar for most people. I think that getting those groups together and being able to improve the community that way, I think, is at this point the best way to go. Particularly because if you look at the Ursa Majors, which is open for voting now, just so you know in the description below, the Ursa Majors is a big awards thing, and there's a lot of categories and a lot of things, and you can nominate those things, but unfortunately not everybody has enough time to consume a lot of those things and to contribute a whole lot of things. So you can contribute, the segments that and I think that the conversation and communities in those subsets would allow for people to be able to focus on those things more readily, and having people who are curators of those kind of content and that kind of stuff can help things. So I think guilds and those kind of things will be much more useful at this point to the furry fandom than unions as far as organization goes. But anyways, that's it for today. I've rambled on long enough. Thank you very much for watching. Kick that like, kick the subscribe button, kick that bell to be alerted to new content. Uh, Kick that like button. Ay. Everyone like interrupts their videos with the like button thing. I don't know what it is. It's like a big thing for the YouTube algorithm. You have to kick the like button for the YouTube algorithm. For the robots, I don't care about the robots. If you liked the thing, you liked it. If you didn't, you didn't. If you don't like it, you can hit the thumbs down button for all I care. It doesn't matter to me. I'm going to do this anyway, even if the algorithms don't support me. I don't care about your stupid algorithms. I've programmed your algorithms. All right? I have a computer science degree. I don't care about the computers. The computers work for me. I don't work for the computer, okay? Anyways, kick a comment in the comment section. If you could think of an organization that you would like to see in the furry fandom, comment and what kind of organization you'd like to see below. Maybe someday somebody will think about, like, hey, look at that. I think this is a great idea. Or maybe somebody will create one day, It might be a good idea. And because obviously one person can't run everything. So the people who are passionate about those things, I think, would be better served running those kind of organizations. But anyways, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next week for another review. Have a good one, guys.